Before you watch this full story, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Your support means everything and helps us share more powerful stories. My name is David, and this is the story of how the worst day of my life became the day that changed everything. My wife, Amelia, and I had been through 5 years of heartbreak. 5 long years of desperately trying to have a baby. We endured failed pregnancies and expensive treatments, all while watching our hopes get crushed over and over again. Every time we thought we were close, our dreams would shatter. The emotional and financial toll was immense, but we never gave up. We leaned on each other, promising that no matter what, our love would be enough. But deep down, we both yearned for a family, for the little miracle we were told might never come. When our daughter, Lily, finally arrived, healthy and beautiful, it felt like our prayers had been answered in a way we never thought possible. She was perfect in every way imaginable, with tiny fingers that curled around my own, a shock of soft brown hair, and the sweetest little face I had ever seen. She was our miracle, and we brought her home to what we believed was the perfect place to raise her. We lived in Cedar Creek Estates, a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and houses that seemed to hum with a peaceful suburban rhythm. Most of our neighbors were friendly families with children, and it seemed like the ideal place for Lily to grow up safely. The only flaw in our otherwise idyllic community was one person who had made it her mission to cast a shadow over everything. Her name was Eleanor Vance, and she was the iron-fisted president of our homeowners association. Eleanor was a woman in her early 50s with a permanent, disapproving frown etched onto her face and cold grey eyes that seemed to take pleasure in finding fault with everyone and everything. She treated our neighborhood like her personal kingdom, ruling it with a clipboard and an endless list of nitpicky rules and complaints. She lived in the biggest house on our street, with her husband, Richard, a quiet and kind man who worked as an accountant. Richard always looked tired and sad, and I often found myself wondering how a decent man like him ended up married to someone so cruel. Eleanor spent her days patrolling the neighborhood, meticulously searching for violations. She would fine people for having the wrong color flowers, for parking their cars slightly wrong, or for leaving their garbage cans out for even a minute too long. She seemed to enjoy making people upset. Just last month, she fined the Miller family $200 because their 7-year-old son left his bicycle on the front lawn overnight. When Mrs. Miller, a kind woman I knew to be a wonderful mother, tried to explain that her son was homesick with the flu, Eleanor simply did not care. "Rules are rules," she said coldly, without a hint of compassion. Eleanor also harbored a deep and strange dislike for children. She complained constantly about kids playing outside, claiming they were too loud and messy. She even tried to ban chalk drawings on sidewalks and wanted to remove the playground from our neighborhood park. Most parents kept their children inside when they saw Eleanor coming, but neither Amelia nor I ever imagined she would target a helpless newborn. Lily had been home for just 3 days when the harassment began. I was in the office, trying to make sense of some work emails while simultaneously attempting to catch a few minutes of sleep when Amelia came in, her face pale with a mix of anger and shock. She was carrying Lily, who was wrapped in a pink blanket, and her hands were trembling. "David, you won't believe what just happened," she said, her voice shaking. She told me about how Eleanor had confronted her on the porch, demanding she take Lily inside. Amelia had been simply holding our sleeping daughter, enjoying a quiet moment in the sun. But according to Eleanor's fabricated rules, no crying babies were allowed outside, and Amelia was violating the peace of the neighborhood. The part that sent a surge of fury through me, however, was when Eleanor had called my precious daughter that thing. My beautiful, perfect daughter, a gift we had spent 5 years praying for, had been referred to as a thing by this monstrous woman. My first instinct was to storm over to Eleanor's house, but Amelia, ever the calmer one, convinced me to hold back for now. We had bigger concerns, like taking care of our newborn daughter and adjusting to our new lives as parents. We had no idea that Eleanor's harassment was just beginning. Over the next few days, Eleanor's behavior escalated from petty to obsessive. She started walking past our house multiple times a day, her pace slowing as she stared at our windows, as if searching for any possible excuse to complain about us. On Tuesday, she left a note on our door saying our car was parked 2 inches over the property line. The next day, She complained that our porch light was too bright and might disturb other neighbors. On Thursday, she declared that our mailbox was dirty and needed to be cleaned immediately. Each complaint came with a threat of fines or police involvement. Eleanor was clearly targeting us, not because of any real violation, but because Amelia had dared to question her made-up rule about babies. The constant stress of her campaign was taking a serious toll on Amelia. She was already dealing with the exhaustion and overwhelming emotions that come with having a newborn, and Eleanor's constant harassment was making everything worse. I saw the anxiety taking over her, the way she would flinch whenever she heard a sound outside, and the nights she could not sleep, even when Lily was finally sleeping peacefully. I decided I had to do something. I tried to talk to Eleanor directly, to appeal to some shred of decency that I hoped was buried deep within her, but she refused to listen. "Your wife is a troublemaker," she told me, her eyes unyielding. "She needs to learn respect for authority." Her cold tone confirmed that reason would not work. So, we decided to fight back in the only way we could think of. I went out and bought a security camera, setting it up on our front porch to record any and all incidents. We also started keeping a written log of every complaint and threat. We believed we were just documenting a difficult neighbor's behavior for a future dispute. We never imagined that Eleanor was planning something truly evil, something that would change our lives forever. On Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after Lily came home, everything changed in a way that shattered our world into a million pieces. I had been up most of the night with Amelia. Lily was having one of those fussy periods many newborns go through, not sick, just unsettled. Amelia was utterly exhausted, worn down by the constant vigilance and the emotional toll of the past few days dealing with Eleanor. She decided to take Lily outside for some fresh air, believing a change of environment might calm our precious baby. I was in the garage, attempting to tackle some lingering household projects, trying to bring some semblance of normalcy back into our lives, when I heard it. A sound that pierced through the morning quiet like a knife, Amelia's voice, raw, desperate, filled with a primal terror I had never heard before, screaming. It was a sound that would forever be etched into the darkest corners of my memory. I dropped the tools in my hands, their clatter echoing in the sudden silence of my own panicked mind, and bolted out of the garage. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread. As I rounded the corner of the house, the scene that unfolded before me was something plucked from a nightmare, utterly impossible, yet horribly real. Eleanor Vance, her face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, was marching towards the back of our house, away from the porch. In her arms, clutched like some ordinary package, was a large cardboard box. From inside it, faint, muffled cries, heartbreakingly familiar, reached my ears. "Lily, my Lily." "What the hell are you doing, Eleanor?" I roared, the sound tearing from my throat. My legs propelled me forward, a desperate, frantic sprint. Amelia was just behind Eleanor, stumbling, tears streaming down her face, her pleas tearing through the air. "Please don't do this. She's just a baby." My mind screamed in protest, refusing to comprehend what my eyes were seeing, what my ears were hearing. This could not be happening. This was not real. But the horrifying reality bit deep. Eleanor, a woman who had terrorized our neighborhood with petty rules, was now carrying my child, my innocent, 4-day-old daughter, towards the river. Eleanor didn't even glance back. Her focus was chillingly singular, her strides purposeful and cold. She marched straight towards the small river that ran behind our neighborhood. I knew the river well. It wasn't very deep, but the current was notoriously strong, and the water was always frigid. Even a strong adult could be caught off guard, pulled under. And in her arms, in that flimsy cardboard box, was my tiny, helpless daughter. I felt a wave of nausea, a cold dread washing over me as I witnessed Eleanor stop at the bank. My wife's face, pale with horror and smeared with tears, was fixed on the box, on our baby. "Maybe next time you'll follow the rules," Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the air like ice, devoid of any human emotion. Those words, spoken with such casual malice, will haunt me until my dying day. Then, with a sickening, audible splash, she threw the box containing my newborn daughter into the river. The box hit the water, instantly bobbing, then began its slow, horrifying drift downstream. I heard Lily's muffled cries from inside the box, fainter now, swallowed by the river's rush, as the current mercilessly carried her away. For a split second, the world tilted, everything went silent, and my heart ceased to beat. It was an instant of pure, agonizing paralysis, a moment where time stretched into an eternity of unbearable terror. But Amelia, my incredible Amelia, didn't hesitate for even that split second. Without a thought for her own safety, without a glance back, without any of the hesitation that momentarily gripped me, she leaped into the freezing river. The water erupted around her as she plunged in, already deeper than it looked, the current immediately pulling at her. My blood ran cold, a mix of sheer terror and an incandescent, burning rage unlike anything I had ever felt before. My wife, my baby, drowning. My beautiful, brave wife, fighting for our child's life against an impossible current, against an unthinkable act of evil. I could vaguely hear Eleanor's high-pitched, cackling laughter from where she stood on the bank, a sound of pure, unadulterated glee. She was actually enjoying watching a mother try to save her drowning baby. The demonic sound of her laughter will forever be the soundtrack to the darkest moment of my life. I tore along the riverbank, screaming Amelia's name, screaming Lily's name, my legs burning with a desperate urgency. I could see the cardboard box getting soggier by the second, starting to fall apart. Water was seeping through the bottom, dark stains spreading across the cardboard, and I knew Lily didn't have much time. I watched Amelia, a strong swimmer, fighting against the relentless current, her arms churning furiously. I saw her reach the box just as it began to sink beneath the surface. She tore at the disintegrating cardboard, her movements frantic, pulling Lily out. My daughter was soaking wet, shivering violently, her tiny body freezing cold, and screaming in sheer terror. Amelia clutched Lily against her chest, struggling to get back to shore. The current kept pushing them downstream, and I could see the exhaustion in Amelia's movements. For a terrifying moment, my heart stopped again. I thought we were going to lose them both, that the river would claim them. But somehow, from somewhere deep within her, Amelia found the strength. I watched as she dragged herself and Lily, soaking and shivering, out of the water about 50 yards downstream from where Eleanor had committed her unspeakable act. They were out. They were alive. But Lily was limp, her skin alarmingly pale, her lips a faint, chilling blue. I knew, with a certainty that turned my blood to ice, that she was hypothermic and in shock. We had to get her to a hospital immediately. My entire being was screaming for action, for retribution, for justice, but first, for my family's survival. Eleanor was nowhere to be seen. The coward had vanished as soon as she realized her monstrous plan had failed. On Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after Lily came home, everything changed in a way that shattered our world into a million pieces. The sun was just starting to warm the air, and for a brief, fleeting moment, it felt like a normal day. I was in the garage, trying to organize some tools and tackle a few lingering household projects, attempting to bring some semblance of normalcy back into our lives. Amelia was on the porch, a place she had grown to fear, but she was hoping a few minutes of fresh air might help calm Lily. The day was quiet, peaceful, almost perfect. Then, a sound pierced through that morning quiet, like a knife. Amelia's voice, raw, desperate, and filled with a primal terror I had never heard before. Screaming. It was a sound that would forever be etched into the darkest corners of my memory, a sound that told me, instantly and without question, that something was horribly, irreversibly wrong. I dropped the tools in my hands, their clatter echoing in the sudden silence of my own panicked mind, and bolted out of the garage. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread. As I burst around the corner of the house, the scene that unfolded before me was something plucked from a nightmare, utterly impossible, yet horribly real. Eleanor Vance, her face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, was marching towards the back of our house, away from the porch. In her arms, clutched like some ordinary package, was a large cardboard box. From inside it, faint, muffled cries, heartbreakingly familiar, reached my ears. Lily, my Lily. "What the hell are you doing, Eleanor?" I roared, the sound tearing from my throat. My legs propelled me forward, a desperate, frantic sprint. Amelia was just behind Eleanor, stumbling, tears streaming down her face, her pleas tearing through the air. "Please don't do this. She's just a baby." My mind screamed in protest, refusing to comprehend what my eyes were seeing, what my ears were hearing. This could not be happening. This was not real. But the horrifying reality bit deep. Eleanor, a woman who had terrorized our neighborhood with petty rules, was now carrying my child, my innocent, 4-day-old daughter, towards the river. Eleanor did not even glance back. Her focus was chillingly singular, her strides purposeful and cold. She marched straight towards the small river that ran behind our neighborhood. I knew the river well. It wasn't very deep, but the current was notoriously strong, and the water was always frigid. Even a strong adult could be caught off guard, pulled under. And in her arms, in that flimsy cardboard box, was my tiny, helpless daughter. I felt a wave of nausea, a cold dread washing over me as I witnessed Eleanor stop at the bank. My wife's face, pale with horror and smeared with tears, was fixed on the box, on our baby. "Maybe next time you'll follow the rules," Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the air like ice, devoid of any human emotion. Those words, spoken with such casual malice, will haunt me until my dying day. Then, with a sickening, audible splash, she threw the box containing my newborn daughter into the river. The box hit the water, instantly bobbing, then began its slow, horrifying drift downstream. I heard Lily's muffled cries from inside the box, fainter now, swallowed by the river's rush, as the current mercilessly carried her away. For a split second, the world tilted, everything went silent, and my heart ceased to beat. It was an instant of pure, agonizing paralysis, a moment where time stretched into an eternity of unbearable terror. But Amelia, my incredible Amelia, did not hesitate for even that split second. Without a thought for her own safety, without a glance back, without any of the hesitation that momentarily gripped me, she leaped into the freezing river. The water erupted around her as she plunged in, already deeper than it looked, the current immediately pulling at her. My blood ran cold, a mix of sheer terror and an incandescent, burning rage unlike anything I had ever felt before. My wife, my baby, drowning. My beautiful, brave wife, fighting for our child's life against an impossible current, against an unthinkable act of evil. I could vaguely hear Eleanor's high-pitched, cackling laughter from where she stood on the bank, a sound of pure, unadulterated glee. She was actually enjoying watching a mother try to save her drowning baby. The demonic sound of her laughter will forever be the soundtrack to the darkest moment of my life. I tore along the riverbank, screaming Amelia's name, screaming Lily's name, my legs burning with a desperate urgency. I couldn't swim as fast as Amelia, but I had to be there, had to get to them. I saw the cardboard box getting soggier by the second, starting to fall apart. Water was seeping through the bottom, dark stains spreading across the cardboard, and I knew Lily didn't have much time. I watched Amelia, a strong swimmer, fighting against the relentless current, her arms churning furiously. I saw her reach the box just as it began to sink beneath the surface. She tore at the disintegrating cardboard, her movements frantic, pulling Lily out. My daughter was soaking wet, shivering violently, her tiny body freezing cold, and screaming in sheer terror. Amelia clutched Lily against her chest, struggling to get back to shore. The current kept pushing them downstream, and I could see the exhaustion in Amelia's movements, the strain in her face. For a terrifying moment, my heart stopped again. I thought we were going to lose them both, that the river would claim them. But somehow, from somewhere deep within her, Amelia found the strength. I watched as she dragged herself and Lily, soaking and shivering, out of the water about 50 yards downstream from where Eleanor had committed her unspeakable act. They were out. They were alive. I sprinted to meet them, my mind a whirlwind of fear and relief. Amelia was a mess, soaking wet, shivering, her face pale with shock and exhaustion. She was clutching Lily, who was wrapped in a wet blanket, to her chest. My daughter's body was limp. Her skin was an alarming, ghostly pale, and her lips were a faint, chilling blue. Her cries had turned into weak, intermittent whimpers. The cold reality of the situation hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Lily was hypothermic and in shock. We had to get her to a hospital immediately. I had to focus, to act, to push down the raging fury that was consuming me. Eleanor was nowhere to be seen. The coward had vanished as soon as she realized her monstrous plan had failed, leaving my wife and daughter fighting for their lives. I rushed to them, pulling Amelia and Lily into a tight hug, trying to lend them my warmth, my strength. "Call 911. Amelia's voice was hoarse from screaming, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her plea was a shock to my system, a command that brought me out of my paralyzed state of horror. I immediately pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen as I dialed. While I spoke to the emergency operator, Amelia desperately tried to warm Lily with a dry blanket, her hands shaking so much she could barely hold it. Lily's weak whimpers terrified me more than her screaming had. My fury, which had been simmering, now boiled over into a cold, hard resolve. Eleanor Vance was going to pay for this. She had picked on the wrong family, the wrong baby. The paramedics arrived within 6 minutes, a flurry of action and urgency. They immediately began treating Lily for hypothermia and potential drowning, wrapping her in special warming blankets and checking her breathing and heart rate with a grim professionalism that told me this was far more serious than I wanted to believe. "She needs to go to the hospital right now," the lead paramedic said, his voice grave. "Hypothermia can be very dangerous for newborns." As they loaded Lily into the ambulance, Amelia, still shivering and in a state of shock, told them exactly what had happened. The paramedic's face showed a deep shock and disgust when she described Eleanor's attack. "Someone threw a baby in a river?" he repeated, his disbelief evident. "Yes," Amelia said, climbing into the ambulance with Lily. "The HOA president. She said she was teaching me a lesson." The paramedic shook his head in a mixture of horror and disbelief and immediately radioed the police. "We have a case of attempted murder of an infant," he said into his radio. My fury solidified into an unyielding determination. Justice would be served, and Eleanor Vance would face the full consequences of her monstrous actions. At the hospital, the chaos and terror of the river gave way to a new kind of a nightmare, one filled with the sterile smells of antiseptic and the chilling beeps of medical equipment. Doctors and nurses swarmed around Lily, their faces grim and focused. They were working quickly to treat the hypothermia, but every second felt like an eternity. I watched, my heart in my throat, as they placed her in a special warming bed and hooked her up to monitors that displayed her tiny, struggling vital signs. Dr. Evans, the pediatrician, came to speak with us, his voice calm, but his eyes filled with a grave concern. He explained that hypothermia in newborns was extremely dangerous and could cause serious complications. Her core body temperature dropped dangerously low, he told us, his words landing like blows. "We need to warm her up slowly and carefully and watch for any signs of organ damage." I felt a fresh wave of panic crash over me. I sat beside Lily's warming bed, holding her tiny hand, which was still so cold, and my mind screamed in protest. She was so small, so innocent, so fragile, and yet she was surrounded by tubes and wires, fighting for her life because of a woman's monstrous act. The thought that someone had deliberately tried to kill my innocent baby was simply unbearable. I couldn't process it, couldn't accept that such evil could exist. I couldn't sit still. My body was thrumming with a violent energy, a desperate need to do something, anything. I paced the room like a caged animal, my mind replaying the image of Eleanor throwing the box into the river over and over again. "I'm going to destroy Eleanor," I kept saying, the words a low growl of pure, unadulterated rage. "She tried to murder our daughter. She has no idea what she has done." The police arrived at the hospital about an hour later, their presence a stark reminder that this wasn't just a personal tragedy, but a crime. Detective Maxwell and Officer Riley were a study in stoic professionalism, but I could see the shock in their eyes as we recounted the story. They took our statements, asked detailed questions, and took photos of Lily's condition and the wet clothes Amelia and I were still wearing. "This is one of the most shocking cases I've ever seen," Detective Maxwell said, his face grim. "Attempting to drown a newborn baby is beyond comprehension. She will face the full weight of the law." They explained that Eleanor would be charged with attempted murder, child endangerment, and assault, and that the penalties were severe. She could face 20 years to life in prison. "We need to arrest her immediately," Officer Riley said. "She's clearly dangerous and could hurt other children. We have to find her." But when the police went to Eleanor's house, she was gone. The coward had fled as soon as she realized the police would be called. The police cars surrounded her house, a beacon of official investigation that drew the attention of the neighborhood. Her husband, Richard, came home from work to find police cars surrounding his house and his wife missing. Richard was devastated when he learned what Eleanor had done. "I knew she had problems with anger," he told the police, his voice raw with emotion. "But I never imagined she could hurt a baby. It is beyond belief." He cooperated fully with the investigation and gave police access to search the house. What they found was a disturbing glimpse into the mind of a woman consumed by hate and obsession. They discovered Eleanor's computer, which contained detailed files on every family in the neighborhood, including photos of their children and notes about their daily routines. She had written angry messages about families with babies, referring to them as neighborhood parasites and noise polluters. Most shocking of all, they found her journal. The journal entries were not the ramblings of a person who had a momentary lapse in judgment. They were the calculated, chilling thoughts of a woman planning an attack. In her own handwriting, Eleanor had written about her plans to eliminate the baby problem in the neighborhood. She had been planning to hurt Lily for days. "Saturday will be the day I solve the crying baby situation once and for all," she had written the night before the attack. "No one will ignore my authority after this." The journal entries were proof of premeditation, making her crime even more serious. Police immediately issued an arrest warrant and put out an alert to find Eleanor. Her photo was sent to airports, bus stations, and train stations throughout the state, and every officer was on the lookout for the woman who tried to murder a newborn baby over HOA complaints. My anger, which had been a constant presence since I ran out of the garage, hardened into an unyielding resolve. Eleanor Vance would be found, and she would pay for what she had done. We were not going to rest until we knew that she was locked away and could never harm another child again. While the police searched for Eleanor, Amelia and I stayed by Lily's side at the hospital, watching her fight for her life. It was a period of excruciating waiting and emotional turmoil. The doctors said she was responding well to treatment, but they wanted to monitor her for 48 hours to ensure there were no complications. Lily's body temperature slowly returned to normal, and her skin color improved, but I could see a change in her behavior that broke my heart. She seemed more nervous, crying more easily than she had before. The trauma had affected her even at such a young age. Dr. Evans assured us that babies are resilient and that Lily would likely recover completely with time and love, but he also referred us to a child psychologist who specialized in infant trauma. "What she experienced was terrifying," he explained. "Babies can be affected by trauma, even if they do not understand what happened." Amelia was overwhelmed with guilt during this time. I would find her quietly crying, blaming herself for not going inside sooner, for not fighting harder when Eleanor had grabbed our baby. I held her and tried to reassure her, telling her over and over, "This is not your fault. Eleanor is a monster. You saved Lily's life by jumping in that river." But the guilt was overwhelming for her. And every time she looked at Lily, I knew she was remembering the sound of her muffled cries from inside that box as it floated away. It tore me apart to see my wife, who was so brave and strong, so completely broken. She had been the hero that day, the one who jumped into a freezing river to save our child, and yet here she was, consumed by a guilt that was not hers to bear. I felt a desperate need to find a way to help her, but all I could do was be there, holding her hand and praying for our daughter's recovery. In the midst of this personal hell, a strange and beautiful thing began to happen. Word of Eleanor's attack on Lily had spread like wildfire through our neighborhood, and people were horrified. We started receiving a constant stream of visitors at the hospital, bringing flowers, food, and offers of help. Our neighbors, people we had only ever shared a polite nod with, now came to us with tears in their eyes. Mrs. Miller, the kind grandmother whose son had been fined by Eleanor for leaving his bicycle out, brought homemade soup and cried when she saw Lily in her hospital bed. "I always knew Eleanor was mean," she said, her voice shaking. "But I never thought she was evil." The Peterson family offered to help with household chores and meal deliveries when we finally came home. Mr. Davies, who was a lawyer, offered to help us press charges and sue Eleanor for damages, an offer we gratefully accepted. The attack on Lily had done what none of us could ever do. It had united the entire neighborhood against Eleanor's reign of terror. People shared stories of how Eleanor had threatened their children over minor issues, stories that were chilling to hear in retrospect. One mother recounted how Eleanor had grabbed her 4-year-old son's arm hard enough to leave bruises because he was riding his bike on the sidewalk. "She's been escalating for months," said Mrs. Harrison. "We should have done something sooner." Everyone felt guilty that they hadn't stood up to Eleanor before she hurt an innocent baby. But nobody, not in their wildest nightmares, had imagined she was capable of attempted murder. It was a relief, in a way, to know that we were not alone in this fight, that our community was rallying around us. Then, on Tuesday morning, 3 days after the attack, we received the call we had been waiting for. It was Detective Maxwell. His voice was calm, but I could hear the satisfaction in his tone. "We got her," he said. "Eleanor Vance is under arrest for attempted murder." A wave of relief, so profound it almost brought me to my knees, washed over me, immediately followed by a surge of anger. We were glad she couldn't hurt anyone else, but we were still furious about what she had done to Lily. Eleanor had been found at a cheap motel 2 hours away from our town, where she had been hiding since Saturday, paying in cash and using a fake name. The police had surrounded the motel at 6 in the morning. When she saw them, Eleanor tried to run, but she was caught in the parking lot. Witnesses said she was screaming about how the baby deserved it, and how she was protecting the neighborhood, showing a complete and utter lack of remorse. Her erratic behavior during the arrest was captured on police body cameras, footage that would later be used in court to show her state of mind and her deep-seated evil. "Good," I said when I heard the news, my voice hoarse. "Now she can face justice for what she did." But the best news came later that same day. We were told that Richard, Eleanor's husband, had shown up at the police station where she was being processed. He was not there to support her. He was there to serve her with divorce papers. Richard had been married to Eleanor for 15 years, but her attack on Lily was the final, unforgivable straw. He told reporters who had gathered outside the station that he could no longer be married to someone who would try to kill a baby. "I thought I knew the woman I married," he said, tears in his eyes. "But the person who threw that baby in the river is a stranger to me. She's a monster." The timing of the divorce papers was a swift and perfect act of karma. Eleanor, led into the police station in handcuffs, still wet and dirty from hiding in a motel, was served the papers by Richard's lawyer right there in front of everyone. According to witnesses, Eleanor completely broke down when she realized her husband was leaving her. She started screaming and crying, begging Richard not to abandon her. "You can't leave me," she sobbed. "I did this for us. I was protecting our neighborhood." But Richard just looked at her with a cold disgust. "You tried to murder a baby," he said. "There's no excuse for that. I want nothing to do with you ever again." Eleanor's arrest and divorce were captured by news cameras that had gathered at the police station, and the footage went viral on social media. People across the country watched in satisfaction as the woman who tried to drown a baby faced the consequences of her actions. This monster, who had spent years trying to control and terrorize our neighborhood, was now being publicly abandoned by the one person who had stood by her, and her humiliation was broadcast for the entire world to see. It was a moment of perfect, undeniable justice, a sign that the universe was balancing the scales after the horrible thing she had done. Lily was finally released from the hospital on Wednesday, 4 days after the attack. Her physical recovery was complete, a miracle that doctors assured us was a testament to Amelia's quick thinking and unwavering courage. They gave us the all clear, saying her vital signs were normal and her body was no longer in danger. But bringing her home was terrifying. The house, which had always been our sanctuary, now felt tainted. Every time I looked at our front porch, I was overwhelmed by a wave of nausea, reliving the horrifying moment Eleanor had snatched Lily from Amelia's arms. The sound of my wife's screams, the sight of Eleanor carrying that box, the muffled cries, it all played on a loop in my mind. The space where the worst of our nightmares had come to life felt unsafe, cold, and a constant, gut-wrenching reminder of how close we had come to losing everything. I had spent the day before she came home frantically trying to restore some sense of security, baby-proofing everything with an obsessive, paranoid energy. I installed additional security cameras and even arranged for a home security system with panic buttons in every room. I told Amelia, and myself, over and over, that Eleanor was in jail and she could not hurt Lily anymore. But trauma does not listen to logic. My wife found herself constantly checking on Lily, even when she was sleeping peacefully. She was afraid to take her outside, even in our own backyard, and I understood completely. We were both living in a state of hypervigilance, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it was exhausting. The child psychologist, Dr. Wallace, came to our house to help us adjust. She explained that it was a completely normal reaction for both Lily and us to have such severe anxiety after such a traumatic event. Healing takes time, she said softly. Be patient with yourselves and with Lily. She taught us techniques to help Lily feel safe and secure, special ways to hold and soothe her, and how to create a calm environment that would help her recovery. Slowly, so incredibly slowly, Lily began to seem more like herself. Her crying became less frequent, and she started sleeping for longer periods, but I could still tell she was affected by what had happened. There was a nervousness in her, a startle reflex, that had not been there before, and it was a constant reminder of the monster who had tried to steal her life. News of Eleanor's attack spread like wildfire, reaching far beyond the borders of our small community. National news stations picked up the story, and it became a headline across the country. HOA president throws baby in river was trending on social media for days, and the public outrage was palpable. Reporters camped outside our house, desperate for interviews about the attack, but we made the decision to stay silent, to focus on Lily's recovery rather than reliving the trauma on television. The public attention, however, had some positive effects. Legal experts on television explained that Eleanor's crime was extremely serious and that she would likely face decades in prison. Child safety advocates used our story to highlight the importance of protecting children from unstable adults, and the incident led to important discussions about the immense power of homeowners associations and the need for accountability. No one should have the authority to terrorize families in their own neighborhood, said child advocate Sarah Jenkins on the evening news, and her words resonated with people all over the nation. The story also inspired other families to speak up about their own experiences with power-hungry neighborhood officials, sharing their stories and finding a collective voice against tyranny. It was a strange comfort to know that something good was coming from our nightmare, that Lily's ordeal might actually lead to meaningful change for other families. Eleanor's trial was scheduled for 3 months later, and during that time, she remained in jail without bail. The judge considered her a danger to the community, and rightfully so. The prosecutor, District Attorney Michael Green, met with us several times to prepare for the trial, and his calm, confident demeanor was a source of strength for us. He explained that Eleanor was facing multiple, serious charges: attempted murder in the first degree, child endangerment, assault and battery, and kidnapping. If convicted on all charges, she could very well spend the rest of her life in prison. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've ever prosecuted, D.A. Green told us, his eyes meeting mine. We have multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and Eleanor's own journal showing premeditation. Her defense attorney will try to argue that she is mentally ill and not responsible for her actions, but we have more than enough evidence to prove that she knew exactly what she was doing. He explained that Eleanor's journal entries showed careful planning, and her actions after the attack, like fleeing and hiding in a motel, demonstrated that she understood the consequences of her actions. It was not a sudden, random outburst. It was a cold, calculated plan to harm our baby, and we were determined to see that justice was served. During the long, agonizing months before the trial, we focused on helping Lily heal and grow. She was developing normally, a testament to her incredible resilience, and her playful spirit was slowly but surely returning. But the knowledge of the upcoming trial hung over us, a constant reminder of the difficult memories we would have to relive. It was a heavy weight, but we carried it together, for Lily, and for the hope of a truly peaceful future. The trial started on a cold Monday morning in November. The courthouse was packed with reporters, curious neighbors, and people who had been following our story in the news, all wanting to see the woman who had terrorized our neighborhood finally face justice. Eleanor looked nothing like the powerful HOA president who had once commanded so much fear. She was thinner, her hair was gray and unkempt, and she kept her head down throughout the proceedings, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. In his opening statement, District Attorney Michael Green painted a clear, chilling picture of Eleanor's crime. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a woman who tried to commit the ultimate act of cruelty, murdering an innocent baby to satisfy her need for control. He explained how Eleanor had escalated from petty HOA complaints to attempted murder in just 1 week. He described her meticulously kept journal entries, which planned the attack, and her complete lack of remorse afterward. Eleanor's defense attorney tried to portray her as a mentally ill woman who had simply snapped under pressure, but his arguments fell flat in the face of the overwhelming evidence of premeditation. I was the first witness called to the stand. It was an intense and difficult experience, describing the days leading up to the attack, Eleanor's escalating harassment, and her icy refusal to back down. I spoke clearly and calmly, but I could feel the anger simmering inside me every time I looked at Eleanor, who sat at the defense table, a silent, pathetic figure. Then it was Amelia's turn to testify, and that was the hardest part for me. Watching my wife, the hero who had saved our daughter's life, relive the worst day of her life in front of a room full of strangers, was an agony I would never forget. She spoke clearly and calmly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She grabbed Lily right out of my arms, Amelia testified. My baby started crying because she was scared. Eleanor put her in a cardboard box and closed the flaps. The jury looked horrified as Amelia described Eleanor carrying the box to the river and throwing it into the water. I could hear Lily's muffled cries from inside the box as it floated away, she said, tears finally starting to flow. I thought I was going to lose my baby forever. Several jury members were openly crying as Amelia described jumping into the freezing river to save Lily. One woman covered her mouth in shock when Amelia explained how the cardboard box was falling apart in the water, how our baby was just minutes from drowning. Eleanor's attorney tried to make it seem like the attack was a momentary lapse in judgment, but Amelia firmly stated, this was not a sudden decision. She had been planning to hurt Lily for days. When she finished testifying, the entire courtroom was silent, except for the sound of people crying. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of Eleanor's guilt. They showed the jury Eleanor's own journal entries, proving she had planned the attack. They showed the security footage of her grabbing Lily and the photos of Lily's hypothermia treatment at the hospital. They brought in expert testimony about the dangers of infant hypothermia, with Dr. Evans testifying that Lily would not have survived if Amelia hadn't reached her when she did. The most damaging evidence, however, was Eleanor's journal itself, with its final, chilling entry written the night before the attack. Tomorrow, I will show this neighborhood what happens when people ignore my authority. The crying baby situation will be permanently resolved. The defense's mental illness argument crumbled under the weight of this proof of premeditation. On the third day of the trial, as the prosecution played the security footage of her throwing the box into the river, Eleanor had a complete mental breakdown in the courtroom. She began screaming, "She deserved it! That baby was ruining everything. I was protecting the neighborhood." Her outburst, which was met with gasps from the courtroom, only further proved her callous disregard for Lily's life. The judge had to call a recess as bailiffs restrained Eleanor and removed her from the courtroom. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before reaching a verdict. When they returned, their faces were grim and determined. One by one, the foreman read the verdicts. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of assault and battery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant guilty. Eleanor collapsed when she heard the verdicts. Amelia and I held hands tightly, a wave of profound relief washing over us. Justice was finally being served. Eleanor's sentencing hearing was packed with people who wanted to see justice done, many of our neighbors coming to show their support. Before announcing the sentence, the judge allowed Amelia to read a victim impact statement. She looked directly at Eleanor, her voice strong and clear. "You tried to murder my innocent baby because you were angry about imaginary HOA violations," she said. "Lily was only 4 days old when you threw her into that river. She had never hurt anyone or done anything wrong." Amelia described the months of therapy and anxiety we had endured because of the attack, how we had lost our sense of safety and peace, but how we had not been broken. Eleanor, for her part, kept her head down and showed no signs of remorse. When Amelia finished, Judge Harrison announced Eleanor's sentence. "Eleanor Vance, you have been convicted of attempting to murder a helpless infant. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." The courtroom erupted in applause. As Eleanor was led away in handcuffs, she received one final blow. Her divorce from Richard had been finalized while she was in jail, and Richard had used her criminal conviction to get a quick divorce and keep all their shared assets. Eleanor lost her house, her savings, and her freedom, all at the same time. We also won a $2 million civil lawsuit against her to cover Lily's medical expenses, therapy costs, and emotional trauma. Eleanor's house was sold, with the money going towards Lily's future education and medical care. Her life was completely destroyed, a fitting end for a person who had tried to destroy our family. After Eleanor's conviction, our neighborhood began to heal. The HOA elected a new president, Mrs. Miller, who believed in bringing people together. The new board cancelled all of Eleanor's unfair fines and created family-friendly policies that encouraged children to play outside. Our community transformed from a place of fear and isolation to one of friendship and cooperation. Many neighbors apologized for not standing up to Eleanor sooner, but we did not blame them. Eleanor was skilled at intimidating people, and it took a horrific event to unite everyone against her bullying. Lily's first birthday became a celebration not just of her life, but of survival and justice. We threw a big party in our backyard and invited the whole neighborhood. Lily, now a happy, healthy toddler, showed no lasting effects from the attack, a testament to her incredible resilience and the love and security we had provided. Our story became a symbol of justice prevailing over evil, leading to changes in HOA regulations across the country. Our terrible experience had helped make other children safer. 5 years have passed since Eleanor threw Lily into that river. She is now a happy 6-year-old who loves to play outside and has no fear of water. We have decided not to tell her what happened until she is older. For now, she just knows she is loved and safe. She started first grade last month, wearing a bright pink dress and a butterfly backpack, excited and confident. As Amelia walked her to school, past the house where Eleanor used to live, past the river where Amelia saved her life, I knew we had won. Eleanor's hatred had only destroyed herself, while our love had brought our family and our community closer than ever. Every night when I tuck Lily into bed, I make the same silent promise I have made since the day she was born. I will always protect you no matter what. A parent's love knows no limits, and justice, though sometimes delayed, will never be denied. Lily is safe, Eleanor is gone, and our story ends exactly as it should, with good triumphing over evil. This is our victory. This is our justice. This is our happy ending.